everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Certified Forgotten. If this is your first episode, you must be a really big fan of Smile. We're really excited for you to listen to our conversation about Smile too. But Certified Forgotten is a weekly podcast with bi weekly series. This week is part of our Uncertified series where we talk about new releases. And then every other week, we have our guest episodes where we spend an hour discussing a film with 10 or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. You get to hear a little bit about the background of somebody who is a horror journalist, a horror filmmaker, a writer, a scholar. And between those two shows, we kind of give you a pretty, I think, Donato, a pretty well balanced and insightful look into what's going on to the world of horror movies.
I like to think that we do. I think we do a good job. My mom thinks we do a good job, so that's one person.
I like it. Your mom has impeccable taste. I'm Matt Monagle. I am joined as always by Matt Donato. And this week for our uncertified episode, we're going to get you out in 30 minutes or less. And we're going to talk about a pretty high profile sequel, something that has increasingly over the last few years become a little bit more of a staple of Hollywood, I would say, is these mid budget studio wide release horror sequels. It's kind of a fun thing to see.
Yeah, and not even just sequels. I want to throw prequels in there too,
Mm.
because if we're talking about 2024, two of my favorite horror movies on the year, at least mainstream wise, are Day One, A Quiet Place, and The First Omen. So already I'm in this headspace where, okay, like prequels are coming out of the gate. These franchise pieces are really doing their part. Sequels, people will debate for eternity if a sequel is better than the original. How do sequels usually fare? Do we need another one?
Yeah.
And Smile 2 coming out harder, bigger, faster, stronger. I was very happy to see that.
It is going, as the kids would say, the full Daft Punk, harder, faster, bigger, stronger, whatever. But all right, if you haven't seen the film, now would be a really good time to step out, go see Smile 2. It's still in theaters. This is the weekend after Halloween, so you've got plenty of time to catch that one before it goes away. And if you need a little bit of a refresher, we're going to give you a quick synopsis of what that movie looks and sounds like. Welcome to the Sky Riley Redemption Tour. A year after surviving a high profile car accident, Riley has a new lease on life and is ready to promote the hell out of her brand new album. But when a late night pop in for some much needed painkillers causes her to witness the suicide of a college friend, yeah, you guessed it, the Smile Demon is back, and this time he's ready to crown the next American Idol. The second feature from franchise writer director Parker Finn, Smile 2 is bigger and bolder than its predecessor. Let's not bury the lead here, Donato. You like this more than the original.
I do. Just to give everyone my quick relationship with Smile, perfectly serviceable for me, as Monocle explained, as one of those mid-tier horror films. But where I found it being scary, it also felt formulaic. And to me, in this era of trauma horror, I think you have to try a little harder to really be inventive, let's say, with how you meld in the trauma and emotionality of your characters and the way it's depicted. And while I do think these scares work quite well in Smile, and I know Monocle doesn't agree with me on this, and
that's all right.
I'll wait for the rebuttal. It is well deserved, but again, where those scares worked for me in some turns, it just felt so plotted out in a rigid way where we had to do a little story, get to a scare, do a little story, get to a scare. Where Smile 2, I think, throws that out the window. I do think Smile 2 is the full realization of what Smile could have been, and it just runs with it. Everything about it is what we've both said: bigger, better, faster, stronger. I do believe that 100%. I think Smile is an upgrade across the board. There's nothing this movie doesn't do worse. Everything's better. Everything is goddamn better. It gets an upgrade. So I am pro Smile too.
Yeah, I think I listened to you and Perry talk about the original Smile on the Mary Hour, which is a really good weekly YouTube series. If you have not watched it, check it out. But Matt Donato and Perry Nemiroff. But I think that there was I found myself agreeing a lot with Perry in the sense that the first movie, and I know you've revisited it as well, so I know that you are solidly in the camp that you're in, and it's not a matter of like, oh, should I go? Like you're where you're at, and I respect that. But I do think that the first film, which made my top 10 list when it came out in 22 or 21, whatever it was, I think that it does such a good job of marrying a couple of things that I didn't realize I needed thrown together and mixed up. We talk a lot on this show about the sun setting, the sundowning of the trauma horror film, and how that has defined literally a decade of horror, dating back to the mid 2010s, and is only now starting to wrap up a little bit. There are still good movies in that vein coming out. It's not, an all or nothing at all type thing. But I think I was so fed up and remain so fed up with the idea that we're going to mercilessly brutalize the emotions of our characters for just because we want to see what kind of hoops we can run them through. That Smile did two things that I really liked. One is that it made it be a monster in the end. It wasn't that this person had broken under the spell of, this abuse that they'd been under earlier in their life, which is really refreshing because all of these trauma horror films tend to basically have the same idea that like your social circle of people will let you down completely when you need them most, which I kind of get tired of seeing repeated again and again in film. It's like it's a creature. There's a thing that's doing it, and that means that it's not their own failings or misgivings. There is a smile demon. A smile demon is doing shit, which Smile 2 makes very, very explicit. And then the other thing I think that it did is it was funny. Like it's a very bleak sense of humor, but this is a movie that is having a good time. The original Smile is a movie that was having a good time and wasn't afraid to kind of get a little bombastic, maybe dare I say a little campy with some of the ways that it presented its scares. And so what I responded to about Smile 2 is exactly, to me, it wasn't a departure from what the original had done. It was just more of what it was doing best. And I think, funnily enough, that means that you and I kind of ended up in the same place. You thought that it had a course correction. I thought it just dialed in and doubled down on what it did well. And we both agree that it's a big, bombastic, at times silly, but really, really ambitious studio film. And that makes Smile 2. I mean, it's definitely, I think, going to be on my top 10 list of the year just because I love the pop star angle of this. I think that it just gives it so much to work with.
I was just gonna say the realization of the pop star angle and putting Naomi Scott in the role of Sky Riley is by far this film's crowning achievement. The way that it does take the trauma of being a young adult, but also the young adult celebrity, and how hard that
Mm-hmm.
is on the character, and how hard that is to navigate. Like, Sky Riley is caught between managers and friends and family members, and she's just trying to get better, but everyone around her has an agenda. And the way that is just bread for the smile demon, like
Yeah.
it is just served up on a platter to be completely devoured by the smile demon. Like he could feed off that kind of celebrity pop star status for years and years and be fine with it. But I really felt the theme so much stronger in Smile 2, and I think that is because they're so much easier to detect, both visually and emotionally. And that's not to say Smile is a hard movie to understand, as you've said.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pretty straightforward, but the directness of Smile 2 and what it is developing from the angle of, child stardom and what that does to people, and, this idea about trying to get better and the demon not wanting you to and having to confront that demon. Like it's the most obvious metaphor. It's the most obvious, any kind of metaphor, whether it's physical or, in your head, whatever you want to say, it's psychological. And Smile 2 yet feels so impactful every step of the way. It hits you over the head, but not in a bad way. It hits you
Yeah.
over the head in a way that is cathartic, and it makes you see the relevance, and it is reflective too of us. Like I can watch this movie and understand exactly where Sky is coming from and be in those shoes. But then also the pop star angle of the musicality of it, and the choreography is so strong, and like it is needed for some of these scare sequences. Like, man, what we're doing with the background dancers and what we're doing with the smile demons, like fucking dance troupe of death. It's
Mm-hmm.
oof. It's such strong imagery. It's so good.
And we're I feel like we're at a place where the pop star has started to become a little bit more of a vehicle for films to play with society and, you know, larger concepts of trauma and abandonment and whatever else filmmakers want to put on them. I think of something like Vox Lux from a few years ago, which is a movie that I really, really like. I think Natalie Portman is really good in it, even if she's not necessarily the greatest singer. I think of Trap from earlier this year, which is definitely trying to play with the commercialization, the commoditization of the pop singer and how that works in this like really souped up and amped up horror scenario. And I think that really like I last year, I think it was last year, whatever it was, a few years ago. Last year, I was all about Alyssa Sutherland in Evil Dead Rise, and I was all about Lizzie Kaplan in Cobweb. I thought that those were like dynamic, that they were performances. I thought that these were actors that were absolutely willing to subvert themselves in service of the movie that they were making. They were willing to dial up all the way to 11. They were big, like kind of what we think of with Tony Collette in Hereditary. They were like huge, unhinged performances. And Naomi Scott, who has a $1 billion movie to her name with Aladdin, is out here showing that she is the best thing to come out of that movie. And she gives a performance which is just like committed, man. There's no other word to describe it. She said it, looked at the script, built the character, said, "Don't worry about it. I understand the assignment." And the entire like gala scene where she has her lipstick completely smeared and is like teetering on the edge of a complete breakdown. It's such a fun performance. It is another one of those Alyssa Sutherland, Lizzie Kaplan, like kind of like, man, I don't usually get into my feelings a little bit about horror performances being recognized in the same way, but like Naomi Scott's doing the work. And I hope that at the end of the year, more people will recognize her for how much this movie hinges on her willingness to go there throughout.
Yeah, she throws herself into every scenario. This is one of those. Sky Riley goes through it all. She is at the height of her popularity, but she is also at the lowest lows of her struggle against addiction and all these other things. And it's the little details that really bring it together. And Perry was informing me on our live stream that she drank every water bottle. Every chug is actually her drinking, whether that's half a bottle, a full bottle. And I know that sounds crazy just to like bring up as like, hey, she's drinking water, whatever. But it adds so much to the character's mania in that moment because could you imagine chugging a whole Voss water bottle and then having to go confront a demon or something of that nature? Like
Yeah.
it messes with her physically, but that then drives her to be in the place where it is the fear is so palpable. Like when she is terrified, you see it so aggressively on her face. When she's angry, you see that so aggressively. The way that she just throws herself from one side of the spectrum to the other with such ease, I think is such a performer's like talent showcase of range. And you don't always get that. Like Naomi Scott can do it all. And the way that she falls deeper and deeper in, it makes me think about how Parker Finn is going to inevitably remake Possession. And do I think that is the best thing to happen? No. I mean, Possession is such a singular film and such a personal film that a remake, can it really do it justice? Whatever.
Yeah.
In thinking of that though, and knowing it's going to happen, I couldn't help but watch how he directed her in Smile 2, Naomi Scott, and going, okay, number one, just cast her. Let's get her
Yeah.
as if we're doing a 1-to-1, let's get her in the Possession remake. But number two, I'm feeling a little better about it because you have taken Sky Riley to the end of her journey in such a dramatic and drastic way
Yep.
that I think you can find those wild swings that a Possession remake would take. But anyway, staying with Smile 2, I mean that you're mentioning, Vox Lux in those movies. I'm thinking immediately of Climax, Gaspar Noé's Climax, because how could I not? A descent into hell through dance. Yeah.
Yep.
And I that much rhythm and that much fluidity. I felt that through Smile 2. But speaking of Smile having great scares, I think Smile 2 has better scares across the board. And like it's
That's
hard to
true.
pick. It's
Yeah,
hard to
that's
pick
true.
which one works for me, but whether it is the creepy stalker standing naked at the end of a mirrored hallway, or like again bringing up those dancers who just chase her in this like I turn around and all of a sudden you run after me but I look at you, you're in a new configuration, and like just 10 contortionist dancers in weird kind of sculpture poses. Oof, that messed with me. And that's just like you're scratching the surface with that stuff.
It's fun to think about Parker Finn as kind of a post J horror generation of filmmakers, right? Because so much of Smile and Smile 2, the all of the jump scares in Smile 2, I feel like I need to use the internet tag. Like all of the jump scares compliment in Smile 2 are structured very much like cutaways in films like The Ring, right? Where you're seeing the after effects of the creature or the demon or the possession thing. Like it is a possession film in a lot of ways, and it's playing with the notion of like what's left behind, what is left with the body when the demon or the monster runs its course. So it's I'm very much enamored with the way that Finn makes his movies, because he's doing a couple of things that I really like in these two films. Like he is making movies that are again fit into the A24 trauma horror bucket of like bad things happen and this person is confronting their demons, but are they demons kind of thing. Like that is the language of the moment, and he does a really good job of setting that up too. But he's also making these things which are in some very specific and very delightful ways, like unabashedly B movies. These are not films. This is not elevated horror. He's not trying to make stuff that you're going to feel good about at the end of the year and you're going to put on your list and be like, it made me think, right? Like these are not. This is not cuckoo. It's not that kind of a movie. And he is honoring sort of like the older school 70s and 80s and 90s levels of like Tom Savini gore too. Each one of these cutaways that he's doing in these movies, when characters are killing themselves in the final thralls of possession of the ghost, like these are not half-assed cutaways. These are like complete dissolution of the jawline. These are like split faces down the middle. He's fucking going there. And so he's this amazing combination of mainstream and B movie and like VHS nasties and like prestige horror. He kind of takes all these different flavors of the genre and is able to swirl them together into one thing that feels cohesive and exciting and fun. And that's not something I feel like in a lot of modern horror, you're kind of boxed into either the low budget, indie high concept horror, or like the mainstream rehashed, creature feature kind of stuff that we tend to get a little bit. I love how Finn is able to kind of take real movie money and make it into his own thing and make all of these elements fit together so nicely.
And he's very much making a quote unquote real movie too. I mean, listen,
Yes.
all horror movies are real movies. I'm not going to have that argument, but he's making a capital M movie here. It belongs on the screen. It belongs in every conversation of like how beautiful it looks. And that goes beyond the choreography. Like cinematography here is fantastic. The way he uses the upside down shots again to make you kind of, are we in the demon's world? Are we in reality? And there's this one really great tracking shot that just zooms in on New York City skyline, and it's upside down and it goes right into Sky's room, and it
Yeah.
captures her as she opens the door and like throws herself against it because she's just seen Lewis beat himself bloody with a weight. And the camera itself giving you that upside down topsy-turvy view and keeping that like psychological kind of tinge going of horror, it's so accomplished and so complementary to everything. Like he's thinking of everything here on a technical level. And I do want to call out Emma Fraser on for Backstage magazine interviewed the prosthetic makeup designer Jeremy Sellenfriend. And we have the prosthetic makeup. We have Alec Gillis also working on the monster specifically, I believe. So like you have very accomplished veterans working on the
Mhm.
special effects here. And what they all echoed in the interview is that Parker Finn came into this going, I'm going to outdo myself. Like I need to draw up some kills here. I need to do some things that really like blow Smile out of the water. And I think he accomplished that. And I'm not saying that every filmmaker doesn't have that same approach, but I am saying I see it coming through in Smile 2 so aggressively, where other sequels they suffer from that sequelitis. Let's just do the same thing. Let's run through the motions.
Yeah.
Let's bang out another hit. Let's do what the people want. Where I genuinely feel in Smile 2 that Parker Finn pushed himself to be what we got. Like he pushed every aspect to say, I want to outdo this. I want to upgrade. I want to level up. Like that is so evident through everything. And I mean, again, starting with Lucas Gage's death so early on and just making us watch his face turn into a bloody pulp being bashed with an iron weight plate. Like it's so good. And
Yeah.
that sets such a stark tone against the other one. But I mean, honestly, also we do start technically with Kyle Gallner And
Yep.
I joked before, I was sitting next to BJ and Amelia and Bill Bria, and I was like, guaranteed Gallner's in the first 5 minutes, and it's like a scream like cold open. And then we watch it happen and we just start laughing, like, yep, that's what it had to be. But it's perfect. It
It
worked
is
so
perfect. Yeah.
well.
Yeah. God bless our Scream King. But yeah, I mean, like Smile 2 has a budget of 28 million, right? And 28 million in the grand scheme of things, especially as we talk about sort of the modern min-maxing of Hollywood, is not a ton of money. But within the horror community, I mean, we do think of sort of like the Blumhouse model, which has been historically, we'll give you $5 million, you can do whatever you want. But the moment you go a dollar over that, like we're gonna fucking have words, right? So that's been the thing. But like $5 million for us in the last decade was like, oh wow, they're giving like millions of dollars to these filmmakers to do stuff. Like it's cool, they're getting to stretch their wings a little bit. But I guarantee you, you can't spend the amount of time and effort it takes on the prosthetics and the makeup for a shot that's in the movie for 2 seconds if you don't have $28 million, right? Like these are the kind of things that happen because you have the sort of resources, and the biggest resource of all, time, to be able to say, all right, we are going to do a dozen of these little cutaways over the course of the film. You know, the thing that happens when later on Sky Riley meets the guy whose brother was killed by the smile demon, and he reflects on how his brother died, that he put a crowbar in his mouth and, you know, killed himself that way. They show that the character that we haven't seen before, that we'll never see again, it's just for a moment a subjective viewpoint from that other character's eyes. But we see what happened to his brother and the complete destruction of that face. That's hours and hours and hours in a makeup chair. That's so much time and energy. That is the kind of thing that you can't do if every penny counts and you've got to wrap your thing in the least possible amount of time. So, you know, again, $28 million compared to the Marvel movies of the world, it's not a lot. But what it buys you is it buys you those little things. It's not the big things. You know, if you're planning your budget appropriately, you're going to be able to get that set piece because you're all building towards the set piece, and that's where you spend most of your money. But it's in the margins of how they set up these shots, like the camera angle going through the window. You know, these cutaways that are not just like CGI or a simple version of prosthetics. They are like full on real world, like SFX, completely done and completely immersive. These are the ways that you separate yourself from the pack, and that is what Smile 2 and Smile before it both did really, really well.
And listen, that's why I'll keep talking about Dark Castle Entertainment films, where I know they weren't financially successful as we've all wanted them to, because there's a reason that filmmakers stopped spending 30 to 40 million on these horror movies that weren't giving the return back for some reason. Again, I could launch into a 2000s horror conversation that would maybe answer some of that, but
And you have with me in person multiple times. So I'm
yeah,
just
and I
saying,
will
if you see Donato at a festival or something, you want that speech, you can have it. All you got to do is ask for it.
go listen to our last episode with Rocco. We got into a little bit of that, or see me at a festival with a beer. You will absolutely hear that rant. But in any case, I will keep talking about movies like House on Haunted Hill, 13 Ghosts, House of Wax, because you can see where the money is going. And does House on Haunted Hill have a terrible CG ghost at the end? Yeah, absolutely. Not going to excuse that. But is the production value leaps and bounds better than anything we're getting from Blumhouse right now? And I like Blumhouse movies. I'm
Yeah.
not going to say they're all bad. Like, I do like a good amount. Maybe not a good amount. I think I'm 50-50, but there's good ones there. But they still don't look like 13 Ghosts, which is, God, production value out the wazoo. Like, it's
Yeah.
that money is going somewhere, and it's going somewhere beneficial. And I will keep talking about a movie like Smile 2 because I see where that money is going. The one rehearsal scene on stage that is just drenched in like the red flashing lighting, and it is her performance. What we see in the costumes, what we see in every part of the stage element, it is so glamorous and it is so attractive. Like, you see where the attention is being spent and the money is going, but it doesn't. Finn does not sacrifice anything in doing that. Like, he's not a horror director that forgets the horror is important or forgets that development's important, character development. Like, he's hitting on all the quadrants that I want from this type of horror movie, and doing so in every kind of appealing fashion. But the ultimate question, though, if you're listening to this, you have hopefully seen Smile 2. And I want Monogle's take, because I talked to Perry about this, because there is a thing that happens at the end, and it makes a choice. And I'm wondering how you reacted now to hearing how much of the film was just the demon's imagination, let's say the fantasy. And like, where do you think that started? Like, where do you think the switch happens and it turns from Sky's reality to her demon world?
That's a good question. First of all, don't really have too much in the way of problems with making that be revealed to be very subjective. I'm a big fan of Dylan Galula, who plays her best friend in the movie. She was in a film called Shithouse, which I only have history with one film, but I have history with Shithouse. But she's so good in it. She's fucking fantastic in it. It's a great performance from her. So I was really excited to see her show up in the film. And I think that understanding the subjective nature of that also like makes that character really shine in a lot of ways. It's one of the better reveals in the movie. But I think that you know, a I think you could probably, and I know there'll be 1,000 like YouTube videos that try and pinpoint the exact moment that things switch or whatever, right? Which is, not my flavor of film criticism, but God bless if that's what you want to do. But I like big swings. I like messy stuff. I like the willingness for you to look bad if you think it's going to be great, right? That's my longtime motto when it comes to horror. And so I think that the notion that you're basically like, yeah, most of that wasn't real. A lot of that wasn't real. Was that guy that talked to her about the solution, the way of actually killing the smile demon, was he real? Who knows? Probably not. Maybe he was a little bit. We have no way of knowing. But what it does is it adds a little bit, I think, of that. I wish I had a better word than like the B movie vibe, right? It allows you to slip into this place where I'll use that like horrible Trump quote, like where you take it seriously but you don't take it literally. And that's such a fun place for a movie to exist, when the stuff that's unfolding on screen, you take it seriously but you don't take it literally. That's a hard thing for movies to like lock in on a lot of the time. And I think that Smile too does it really well, because once that switch was flipped for me, I didn't find myself being like, oh, I'm cheated on what could happen. I was like, fuck yeah, like nothing that happened matters. Like we get to really enjoy, because you're always, my last word on that is I always feel like there's a point 3/4 of the way through a movie where I'm like, how's it going to land? And I can feel myself being like, if it lands well, I'm into it. If it doesn't land well, I'm not into it. And movies are making decisions that like narrow the options, the possible outcomes narrow as you go. And you're like, I kind of would have liked a bigger ending. It's sort of feeling like it's not going to here. The moment that happens with Smile, everything and anything is on the table for how that movie can end. Once you realize that everything is sort of subjective, and then it goes to the biggest possible place, which is the perfect ending, and it could only have happened if a lot of the things that happened before were sort of like cast aside to make it work.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Dylan Galula, because the comedy you alluded to prior is so important to me in Smile 2.
Yep.
Because in this fabricated scenario where the demon is in control of everything, and we know at this point the demon is in control because this is when Sky breaks out of the rehabilitation clinic and gets in the car with Galula's character and still makes fun of Staten Island. Like, just to have
Mm-hmm.
the common decency to still get one good joke about Staten Island in there, it's a demon I can get behind. I think I
Yep.
like that, but it is. I think even outside of Galula's character, Miles Gutierrez Riley's character Joshua, the assistant, has such some great lines in there. I think one of your favorite lines, possibly, I forget, but like,
It's the like, okay, one surprising soda coming right up. My
yep,
bet it's the best line in the movie. It
yep.
like the audience, it was the only time everyone in my audience laughed, but everybody in my audience laughed.
And but that it goes down the line. I think the supporting cast is so important. I mean, Rosemary DeWitt as Elizabeth Riley, the mother, is doing great stage mom sternness, let's say. And
Mm-hmm.
again, Sky Riley's performance, Naomi Scott here, is so important, obviously, and it is coming from Scott, and that is the real testament to her performance power. But it's needing everyone around her. It's needing all the supporting characters to either enable or be an obstacle to her getting better. And I think all of those performers around her helped tremendously just
Yeah.
accentuate what she's doing. So, I mean, talking about ensembles, I think this is a great ensemble. It goes farther than Naomi Scott, even though she deserves the most attention. And just Parker Finn just hitting above his weight class here from what I thought. Seeing Smile, I had certain just, yeah, I know the kind of filmmaker I think you
Yeah.
are. And then Parker Finn comes and just goes, yeah, you think? Well, here you fucking go. And now I'm like, you know, again, do I love the fact that we're getting a Possession remake? No. Is it happening and do I have to be on board with it? And do I feel better about it now? Yeah, I kind of do.
Yeah. And hey, the Sky Riley finger quotes, air quotes album that was released with this movie, it's pretty good too. That's the biggest difference from a lot of these movies is the music. And this is actually pretty good. The music in Trap, not so much, but this one works for me. That is our episode on Smile 2. You should see it if you did like the first one. If you didn't like the first one, just like go and bask in the altar of what Scott and Finn are able to do together. It's something special, and it's, studio films. Horror is not a dangerous thing going into 2025, no matter what the trades would have you believe. We're in great shape, I think.
Fuck those headlines.
Matt Donato, you are traveling the world right now, but you are still cranking out reviews and coverage. Where do people go on social media to connect with you online to see what you're writing about?
You can follow me, as always, at Donatobomb, DonatoBomb, on Twitter, Letterboxd, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. Let's keep it with those this time.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find me every week talking to Perry Nemiroff on her YouTube channel, usually on the weekends. We don't really have a set time, so just follow the socials. We will always tell you when we're going to do a nice little live stream and talk about film stuff. And also, as always, just keep listening to this podcast, please. Check our website out. If you would be so kind and you like what you hear, a review goes a long way. It is an unfortunate byproduct of what we do, but the more that you talk about what you like, the more you're going to get with more of what you like.
And we just synced our RSS feed to YouTube podcast or YouTube audio or YouTube, whatever it's called. So YouTube music. If YouTube music is the place you go for podcasts, okay, strange choice, but we're there too. So you're welcome. Yep, and you can follow me basically just on Blue Sky. It's monocle.bluesky.social, whatever the chart string is. But we're planning our next episode. I'm very excited for our next guest, a return guest, but somebody that we've both been wanting to get on the show forever. So stick with us. We've got a lot of good horror coverage coming up. Thanks for listening, y'all.